So now I got the case back vertical, and we're gonna go ahead and mount the DVD burner and mount the expansion bay, and finish making the serial ATA connections and the power connections for all the SATA devices. Oh, that's nice. I guess you're just supposed to break that off. Let's go ahead and put the expansion bay in. Okay, I got the 5 1/4 SD reader installed. It took a little bit of doing. I actually had to take the DVD burner back out and see if that one would fit actually in where the DVD burner was. It would. And for some reason the top bay was just a little bit off to where I had to actually take the burner out and then feed that there 5 1/4 expansion bay up in at an angle and then push it in. And then I put the DVD burner in and it fit fine, so now I'm going to hook them up. Here we have the back side of the case. I connected serial ATA power and data to both of the hard drives, data to the DVD drive. As you can see, I haven't done any cable management, but I really think that that's probably, I'm just going to leave it like that. And now we just need to hook up data to the burner. The only thing I wasn't 100% sure about is where to connect the serial ATA connectors, whether it was to the brown connectors or the yellow ones. I read real quick in the manual and it says that the yellow ones, not necessarily only if you're going to set up a RAID configuration, but it had that specific statement in there if you are going to set up a RAID configuration that you have to hook it up to those. The brown one specifically said that it's for data drives only, and I think right about now is probably the time we need to turn it on and see what it does. Alright, I guess here's the moment of truth. Turn the power supply on, so let's see what we get. Just word of advice. Alright, and in part 2, let's go ahead and see if it works now. I have it hooked up to the VGA output, so it could be possible that it doesn't actually boot to that output. As you can see right here, it has some kind of code. I guess it's time to go to the manual. I hit that little reset button down there because after reading on a forum there was something about that. I can't remember what it was now. So I read a little bit more. I did that. Still couldn't get anything on my monitor. I read a couple other things in some forums. One thing that somebody was having a problem with, which was completely unrelated to mine, which is that mine's not turning on and it's showing this Q code 0099. One of the suggestions was make sure that your monitor is set to the particular port that you're looking for or whatever. Then I started thinking, I just disconnected the HDMI feed out of my camera from my monitor here on my test bench, and I started thinking, well, maybe I need to change the source so it goes back to a digital input, because once again I'm hooking this up via the HDMI port and using an HDMI to DVI cable to run to my workbench monitor here, and guess what happened? So I just moved it around and the power plug came undone. What I was going to show you was the simple fact that I didn't have the monitor hooked up to the correct input, and now I do. It works. Let's start installing the operating system and start installing updates, and then we'll start tweaking it. This is what it looks like prior to me putting the case sides back on. So the only cable management that I really did was take some twisty ties and get the cables that are exposed from the back and just got them tied down a little bit so they're not in the way when I put the case cover back on. Twisty ties probably aren't the best option because they have metal in them, and there's a possibility that if the metal is exposed, it could short something out. There's still a good possibility that this isn't the final revision, so zip ties didn't seem to be appropriate. This is the front of the case, nothing special here. The only thing that changed really was I took the 5 1/4 hub that had USB 2.0, 3.0, and more importantly, the most important thing is I needed it as an SD card reader. However, a couple things. First off, I couldn't get it to work. Second is that I didn't put 2 and 2 together and realized that when I have that card in there, I can't shut the door. There was a possibility that I could set it back further in the bay, but I may have had to drill some extra holes to do that, and it was already a tight fit. The main thing is it didn't work. I couldn't get anything but believe the USB 2.0 to work, and that was pretty much it. And I wasn't going to spend much time on researching it. I have these USB 3.0 ports, and I believe I have the 2.0 ports hooked up as well too. I didn't anticipate on using these, but now since I don't have that USB hub, I'm going to use them. They're plugged in, ready to go. So this is how the inside of the case looks. Here's the back of the case. The only thing that I noticed that was kind of weird about this was it didn't seem as though this plate mounted all that well. Like it's bowed out here. All of these ports seem to match up okay. SPDIF, HDMI, and this first Thunderbolt port. It just seems like this right here, this USB, this last 4 little USBs, they're not lined up properly, so I have to kind of push down the motherboard in order for it to take some USB 2.0 peripherals. But I figure once I got them in there, it'll be no problem, and I don't think it's stressing the board out. Where everything ties in down at the bottom seemed to not need any cable management, so I just left everything alone. So I'm sure you can see that, again, I have no PCI expansions. Here's the motherboard with cooling system. You can see I did mount the fans on top of the radiator and had them blowing out. I'll show you the top view here in a second. I looked at one of Linus's video blogs, and I finally understand why the fans were recommended to be mounted on top of the radiator. One of the points he makes, whether you're pushing or pulling through the radiator, it virtually almost makes no difference. At least that's what I gathered from it. But the point of mounting the fans on top of the radiator is if you're blowing through the radiator, it's going to suck dust through the fans and blow it onto the radiator and trap it in between the radiator and the fans, making it almost impossible to clean. Whereas in this configuration, you have the fans sucking air through the radiator, and all the dust and all that stuff, that at least the bigger particles, will get trapped on the radiator side that's exposed, and you can clean it a lot easier. So as you can see, I remounted the fans to where they're on top, sucking through the radiator. Here's what it looks like from the top of the case where the fans are blowing out. One thing that was kind of weird when I went to install it in this configuration, I had to use the longer bolts to go all the way through the fan and tie into the radiator. The only issue with that is you're having to hold the radiator up with the fans sitting there, and then you have to thread each screw, or just a couple screws, to get them to where the bolts could hold the fan and the radiator, but you still had to match them up. And it seemed like the bolts, although I didn't have any to try, it seemed like the bolts probably would have just been barely long enough to have the bolt, a washer, a rubber grommet, and still have enough room to get threaded onto the radiator. But it worked. I just don't have any of the rubber grommets for sound dampening on there, and doesn't seem like it's going to be a problem. Now I'm going to mount the side covers to the case and see what it looks like all put together, and I'll start using it in my video production. Another cool thing is they thought of everything. They even put some sound absorption actually where a case fan would go, so you can take it off if you need to, put a fan there. I'm not going to, or leave it on there, and it'll help with sound absorption. This is the side that I thought was going to give me some problems, but it seemed to go on okay. So I'll just tighten up these thumb screws. Okay, now it's put together. I'm going to put it in my 19-inch rack over here in this kind of position, not a horizontal position. And we'll start using it, and then we'll start tweaking it from there.